Moving along, social marketing, actually brands and music in partnership. This will be our penultimate session, and then Ms. Huffington will be on at 4:15. Social marketing has finally established itself as one of the key ways of doing business in the current music world. The various elements of play, brand marketing, consumer engagement, and of course the music will be discussed here today. To moderate, we asked the founder and CEO of this panel's sponsor, Sonicbids, to do the honors. Please welcome Panos Panay. You can sit there. Do we have, what's our microphone situation here? David? Everybody's got handhelds. Good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone. Okay, thanks for coming. I will take about 2-3 minutes just to introduce the panel and everybody, and we'll spend the next, I don't know, half an hour or so chatting up here, and then hopefully opening up for questions. I think we're talking until what time? 10 till 4? No, sorry, 4:10 or something like that. So my name is Panos Panay. I'm the CEO of Sonicbids. We're a social music marketing platform that connects bands, promoters, consumer brands, and fans. And you know, we've seen over the last decade or so clearly internet and technology and mobile technology completely change the way that music is marketed, bought, sold, funded, created, distributed. And it's also had a tremendous impact on the way that consumer brands are reaching out and engaging with consumers, and the way that advertising is ultimately marketed and promoted. And more, especially with the dramatic changes that the recording industry is going through, we've seen more and more consumer brands really step into that void, step into the role that major record labels used to fill with respect to the actual promotion and discovery and even funding of music. Just consider this. On Sonicbids alone, our average band connects with about 5,500 to 6,000 social media followers, and they talk to them on an average once a day. Brands are very, very eager to ultimately tap into that dialogue that bands are having with their fans, into that authentic connection that they have, into that sense of unadulterated connection, if you will, that these guys have. And according to the Wall Street Journal, within 3 years, consumer brand spending with respect to emerging artists is expected to actually exceed the total amount that major labels are spending with respect to actually the funding and the promotion of new music. That's pretty incredible if you consider that only 15 or even 10 years ago it was practically taboo to actually work with a brand. And especially in the United States, and I would say maybe even North America, a lot of artists would specifically ask not to be featured in commercials that were often shown in other parts of the world, precisely because they were afraid that they would be considered as sellouts. So it's dramatic 180. So here with me, I have a great group of panelists, all from different parts of this world. And without any further delay, I'll just go ahead and ask each of them to introduce themselves. And I'll start with Brenden on the far left side of mine.
Great, thank you. My name is Brenden Mallette. Obviously, you can see by the name up on the screen there, but I work for Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. The reason I'm here, obviously, is because I have something to do with the music business. I've come from Live Nation, 11 years experience with Live Nation, and because I'm working with Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment now, I'll just give you a little bit of background on that. Live Nation and Maple Leaf Sports, obviously on the Toronto Maple Leafs, Raptors, the Air Canada Centre, and so on. We formed a partnership with Live Nation, so I'm representing the sponsorship side of the music business for Live Nation in Canada. So we have a team now that has moved from Live Nation over to Maple Leaf Sports to work on the music business and to build sponsorships and connecting bands to brands and everything that we do in the world that we're discussing here today.
Thanks.
My name is Trent Fulton, and if you think it's hot out there, by the way, it's really hot up here. We start melting.
Feeling like rock stars.
I'm one of the owners and managing director of an advertising agency called The Hive, based in Toronto. So we spend a lot of time dealing with brands, and we spend a lot of time dealing with brands and music. Our biggest client is Jack Daniels, and in the US, we activate all their music programming in the US, and we put on lots of tours. Globally, we work with Miller, SAB Miller, to do the Miller Music Tour. And then in Canada, we work with Rogers Wireless and Coca-Cola to use music to drive relevance with teens. So I've been in a lot of boardrooms presenting music and trying to help clients understand the music business over the last 5 years especially. That's me.
Brad Josling, Vice President of Sales for Hip Digital. We are a technology and content company. Essentially, we license premium digital content, everything from music from all the major record labels to movies, mobile apps, games, ebooks, things like that. And then we work with tier one brands to use that content as a premium or incentive to activate consumer behavior, whether it be purchasing products at retail. Most recently, we're also doing a lot of things in the social space from a social rewards perspective. So rewarding fans for being a fan, engaging on Facebook with brands too, because it's obviously a major challenge for brands. So giving content as an incentive reward to engage with brands is essentially what we do. And we work with the likes of Diageo, General Mills, Sprint, Wireless, things like that.
Hi, I'm Kerry Cockrill. I work for Research in Motion, and I do entertainment marketing and sponsorships for the BlackBerry brand. I'm sure you guys are all really familiar with our brand. We do a lot with entertainment. I work across verticals, so I don't just focus on music. I also focus on film and television. We're major sponsors of the Toronto International Film Festival. But we also have a social music app that we've recently launched called BBM Music, which interfaces with BBM. I'm actually based in Los Angeles, but I report into and have a team in Waterloo. And my background is in entertainment. I used to work in the music business and the film business in Hollywood.
Thanks.
And finally, not to be confused with Brendan at the end, I'm Brennan with no D. And I head up business development at Shopify. So for those of you that don't know, Shopify is located in Ottawa. We like to think of ourselves as a Silicon Valley company that just took a wrong turn north. We have about 22,000 active online stores on our platform, and we're really the largest e-commerce platform for SMBs and entrepreneurs, and we're in over 80 countries. Our play in music is actually really fun because for us it's very much an observant role. Musicians, bands, brands come to Shopify and build their marketing strategy on top of our platform. So I'm happy to be on this panel because I get to share a lot of what we've seen from behind the scenes and not actively being involved in going out and seeking those A-list players and really, again, working with a lot of emerging artists.
Cool, and worth noting that Brad and I did a very similar version of this panel down south about a week ago, so we kind of feel like Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, but we haven't quite agreed who's who.
Again, only if you're Jerry.
No, I want to be Dean because it's cooler. So before I go on, I always like to ask who's in the audience, just because it helps us sort of guide the questions. So how many of you in the audience are in bands or represent bands? Wow, very few. And how many of you, is this a Canadian Music Week? Okay. And how many of you are in the general music industry? Okay, and how about how many of you are you from the digital/brand world? Okay, quite a few. Wow, this is going to be an interesting audience. Okay, so at Sonicbids, we've seen over the last few years more and more brands begin to approach us, as I said at the beginning of this, because they're interested in fundamentally tapping into that connection that in our situation, primarily 360,000 emerging bands have with their audience, as we're moving away from what used to be a very broadcast-oriented world, a very monologue-oriented world, to the dialogue-centered internet world. We've seen more and more consumer brands, such as on our end, companies like Red Bull and Diesel and Gap, and even companies like Marriott Hotels come to us and say, hey, we want to be a part of this. We want to be a part of this dialogue, and we want to reach that audience, which to us is very highly desirable because it tends to be young, early adopting, influential, as a means of our marketing strategy. So I guess I'll just start by asking, Kerry first, okay? What is it about music that's so appealing and so different and so interesting to a brand like RIM, and why that sector and not something else? Why not film or anything else?
Well, we do work across all the entertainment verticals, but music is a priority for us. I would say, and I think this goes across brands and across everything, music is truly universal. I think it's the one vertical, the one piece of entertainment that everybody in the world likes. You may like different genres or something different. It could be, it could be sort of local indigenous music, but music seems to resonate through everybody. I don't think you could say the same about sports or about film, about television, at least not in my circles. Anyway, so I would say that music is pervasive, but for a brand like BlackBerry, with smartphones, you guys know it with technology out there, you can connect to your music easily with it. You take it with you, it's in your pocket, your phone connects you to everything that you love and you want to take with you, and music is one of those things that I think, it stays with you and you want to have available wherever you go.
And Trent and Brenden, in terms of your clients, why are they interested in music? Why this and not something else?
A lot of it is to do with relevance and engagement. We live in this era where in every category, if it's soft drinks, phones, cars, there is just this glut of choice and very few real points of difference. And we try and tell our clients that no one wakes up thinking of your product, and in reality, even if you have a point of difference, you'll only have it for a few days before it'll be copied. So, they've got this glut of choice. They're surrounded by media that's, overwhelming, and so it's easy for brands to be ignored. And I think all brands have realized that they can't talk about themselves anymore. They can't just talk outwards. So they need to look at how can we play a part in people's lives. So it's not enough, Coca-Cola, one of our brands, they always talk about we want to roll as a product. So we have sugar, it's going to give you a boost of energy, which is great as a product roll, but we want to roll in your life. So what are you passionate about? What are you into? And how can we play a role in fulfilling that? And at a higher level, how can we play a role in the world? Which gets more into the social responsibility. But in music, it's what are people passionate about? And that is, to your point, Kerry, it is a universal theme that, no matter what age you are, we all have bands we like, we all have genres of music we like. And so whatever brand, they can tap into music if they want and connect to that kind of passion point.
And what's interesting is that obviously this is not something new. To some degree, brands and music have gone hand in hand for well over 100 years. We work with companies like, Hennessy or even Coca-Cola, I would assume, that has a 100+ year history of association with music. But, Brenden, on your end, I'm just curious to hear, your thoughts about this.
Well, we always say in a lot of things, it's exactly what we present every day to partners and potential clients is why music? And it's a question that we ask of ourselves and a question we ask of our clients and our prospects and people that we're trying to talk to. But the best way that we start off these types of presentations is by saying, do you remember your first concert? And everybody, instantly, it takes them right back there. And to use Trent's word, it's a passion point. It's something that resonates with people for the rest of their lives. It's something that takes them back to that point in time, to that experience, to that who they were with, what they were wearing, the whole experience of the night. They can connect to it. They can remember it. It resonates for the rest of their lives. And it's a great way for us to begin that dialogue, to put people in that mindset, that mind frame of, why music? Well, this is why music, because it's something that you will connect with forever. It's something that will take you back in time. And then finding a way to connect a brand to that passion point is what we try and do every day and leverage that because it's so exciting.
Well, especially live music. It can't be copied. That feeling you get when you're fist pumping and singing along or in the mosh pit or whatever, that can't be copied. Obviously the track can be copied, but that live experience especially is... And it's flexible. Music is very flexible. You can have a real utility. You can help people. Rogers plays a great role in helping people get into shows without paying service charges, or have you can amp that experience by giving a VIP access. So there's lots of ways you can manipulate music, which I think clients also like. They can have a different role.
And now, of course, sponsorship of tours is nothing new, but now we're seeing more and more of these brands jump into the social space, which is obviously the new frontier, and where a lot of that money is being redirected. And they're trying to develop or use music initiatives as a means of, tapping into that social conversation. So, Brad, from your end, and Brennan, tell me a bit more about that. Are you seeing, especially I'm interested in this whole rewards thing, because it taps right into the dialoguing component of this. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there's a couple things going on, continuing from what these guys were saying, is that at the same time that there's this passion point around music, there's also a convergence of technology happening, right, with the smartphones and tablets. I just read a statistic recently, and I think half of the US is now consuming media through their smartphones and tablets, and that's only going to grow, right? So it's actually been great for the recorded music industry because we're actually seeing a bit of growth again, which is amazing. So there's a big consumer appetite for music, and at the same time, in the social space, I mean, brands are investing more and more money and dollars into social media, and a lot of brands have been very successful at acquiring fans and spend a lot of money doing that. But then it becomes about, okay, now what? How do we ongoing engage our fans and get them to come back and interact with our brand? And another statistic I saw recently was the top 200 brands in Facebook, less than 1% of their fan bases are actually engaging with the brand, which is extremely low for the amount of dollars that are being spent. So one of the approaches that when we work with our brand partners is actually enable them to give away this content, whether it be music or mobile apps or what have you, but predominantly music, directly through their Facebook app. So all of a sudden you're actually rewarding people with content that they're passionate about. But on top of that, what we've realized is that people also love to talk about the content that they love. So it does create a lot of inherent conversations, not maybe specifically about the brand, but they're inserting themselves into the conversations about my favorite artist, and I can't wait till that artist comes here on tour, and I like this, and we've seen it just light up amazingly just from like single wall posts around social rewards with music. So it's pretty exciting times. I think there's a lot more that can be done, especially in the social space around this.
Brennan?
Yeah, social for e-commerce has always been a very important sales channel. So when we look at bands like LMFAO, who have their store on Shopify, Party Rock Clothing, that band was so well connected in the social media sphere on Twitter and Facebook. And to look at a band that came out of really nowhere in a matter of years and exploded into a lot of the mainstream media, comparing that to a lot of established artists, without that social presence, there was really nothing for LMFAO. They had an amazing strategy that came through their e-commerce platform, and now are leveraging Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, and really putting themselves out there in the social sphere. And I think that authenticity of having such an amazing community supporting you as a band, as an artist, and what you do is really powerful. And it's no wonder brands obviously want to tap into this kind of authenticity and passion the bands share every day.
So, and clearly I'm not independent of this, since even from Sonicbids' standpoint, from 3 years ago where we had zero brand revenue to now where almost 50% of our money comes from brands, we're seeing an increased level of investment and engagement from these brands. But I'm curious to hear from everybody on the panel. So how on earth are brands measuring this with respect to return in dollars? I mean, it's very much bit still at the Wild West. It's kind of like a voodoo art right now, because we're talking about, I've heard brand CMOs talk about return on objectives, which is all about conversations and all kinds of like mumbo jumbo. But at the end of the day, somebody's sitting somewhere, maybe with the word F in their title, and that's for finance, saying, okay, show me the money. Where is it coming from? So how is ultimately success of these programs measured? And Kerry, if you want to jump in first.
Yeah, I think, it's across the board, but really it's a matter of setting up what your goals and objectives are on the outset. So why are we going to do X, Y, and Z? And we need to sort of reach those goals then through whatever it is we're deciding. So an example I've got is the Black Eyed Peas. We'd sponsored a tour a couple of years back, and the whole reason we did that was to promote BBM. So will.i.am had the genius idea of, well, what if I give out my pin and we let the audience send me BBMs, and then during the show, I'll come out and do a freestyle rap to those BBMs. So that's what we did, and it was amazing, and we saw a growth in the BBM adoption and awareness and usage. And so while you can't attribute one thing in isolation, because there's obviously a marketing mix that's a part of everything, you can say that that obviously helped with that growth. But we were in market with advertising. We were doing other things as well. But again, it's having clear objectives and goals for why you're going to do something. And I still believe that music and tours and all that can actually help drive pretty much any goal and objective you've got because of the passion, because of the emotion, and because of the pervasiveness.
And how about the social world? I mean, ultimately, how is that return measured by these brands?
Well, I mean, when you're giving away digital content or doing anything on Facebook, there's a tremendous amount of real-time analytics you can get, and our company provides a lot of reporting back to our clients. But there's also social CRM companies, very successful ones like Buddy Media and SingCaps here in Toronto, that have built incredible businesses around creating these brand apps for the brands. And there's an immense amount of information that their value add is really dissecting that information and consulting with brands to explain what it all means for them in the social space. But I truly believe that the elephant in the room, and I think a lot of senior marketing executives are starting to go, okay, we're spending a lot of money here in social media. Is it actually creating sales lift, or is it acquiring me new customers and those kinds of things? And I think even Facebook, I know a lot of the people in the Facebook sales team, and that's one of their challenges too. So I think the next phase is really going to be driving fans from an offline experience, whether it be shopping in retail and purchasing a product or attending a concert, and making some sort of transaction and engaging with the brand app and sharing that experience with their friends, because all of a sudden you can go from a one-to-one relationship but escalate it into sharing that experience with your friends and really tying that to an actual transaction. I think the next couple of years that we can start cracking that nut, Facebook's going to become more rich.
Is there an actual dollar value assigned to a Facebook like? Can anybody
Absolutely.
say? And what is that?
It depends. I've seen anywhere from like $3 to $10 sometimes. Yeah.
I thought SingCaps did. I think it was like $139. I don't know where they got that or how they made that up, but
for a Facebook like?
Yeah.
Man, I should be charging a lot more money.
I mean,
Exactly.
it's always going to be a mixture of soft and hard metrics, depending on the program. I mean, what social media has given a lot of brands. I mean, we've been running a lot of events and a lot of concerts for a long time, and it used to be you'd have the concert, you'd touch 300 people, but it was really hard to amplify that. Now through social media, you can, before the concert, obviously you're releasing content, you have the show itself, and then post-show, you can get people coming to tag photos or whatever they're going to do to kind of share that content on. But again, sometimes it's very hard metrics. We did a program with Coca-Cola on iTunes where with every bottle of Coca-Cola you got a free iTunes download. So they know how many of those were done, which drove sort of transactions. But they also do tracking studies. Are we seen as a youthful brand? Are we seen as an innovative brand? Are we seen as a relevant brand? So it's a real mixture, but I think I agree. It's got to, we've got to get tighter on those metrics. But I think there's enough there to make people feel a lot better now than they did even a few years ago.
So is it about hardcore sales, or is it about being you talked about relevancy, which is interesting because there's nothing more relevant and more real to a young person than music. So is it about being part of that dialogue, of that conversation? Is that what these guys are looking for?
Well, I think part of it is, I heard a stat that only 14% of people trust advertising, which means, 86% of people don't trust advertising. So one in nearly, one person out of 10 in a room might trust traditional advertising, but they trust what a friend sends to them. And so if we can get someone to have an experience through music activation that they share with a friend, and the brand goes along with that, that's way more powerful than us just trying to talk to them and talk down to them. So it has the potential to be really powerful, but it's got to be more than just a logo up on a wall. I think it's how you activate music is just as important as being in music.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. again, a lot of our conversations, and it's all about leveraging that association, leveraging the rights and the permissions that you have with that artist, and kind of working with them to understand what their objectives are, speaking on the artist's behalf, but also understanding the brand's objectives, which Kerry alluded to. Obviously, that's very important, but we can satisfy a lot of those objectives by understanding where everybody's coming from, what everybody wants to get out of it. The artists can certainly benefit heavily by aligning with brands, because the brands themselves have their own network of consumers, customers, databases, social media, all of those elements, whereas the artists on the same side of it have a different set of the same type of elements. So leveraging both together, I mean, it's all about building your customer base, it's all about increasing sales, it's all about making money at the end of the day, whether you're a band or a brand or, you know, a promoter putting on the show that's aligning the two. It's about leveraging that association and building upon that.
So you guys think that music is sort of like the fad du jour for these brands? Because clearly we've seen, as I mentioned earlier when we started the panel, that we've seen spending increase every year. I didn't mention the number, but according to the Wall Street Journal, over $1 billion was spent last year from brands on programs that have to do with this umbrella term of emerging music, and it's expected to exceed $3 billion over the next 3 years. But do you guys think that this is just something that's a fad, or is there a fundamental shift that's going on in both the advertising and media industry, but also the music industry in general?
I'd have to say that having as much of a close-knit community and relationship with your fans, that's not going to go away between a fan and a band. I think fundamentally that's there. And for us, in being in e-commerce and seeing people want to leverage the power that these individuals have has really grown. I don't necessarily think it's going to slow down. I don't think anything is really in the external environment is going to change that. I think the passion of wanting to connect with your band, buy their T-shirt, buy their concert tickets and show up. That really doesn't have a price tag. At least on my side of things. I know you guys will pay a lot of money for that, but. I want to say kind of one example, and what we've actually seen is at Shopify, SMS Audio teamed up with 50 Cent recently to sell SMS by 50, the competition to Beats by Dre and whatnot, and they came to Shopify, and they're trying to leverage a social community that 50 Cent has on Twitter of, I think it's 3.2 million followers. That doesn't necessarily translate into 3.2 million sales. But what it does do is provide an avenue that can be used as a proof of concept for whether or not this project, this initiative between a brand and an artist should be taken to the next level.
So what's interesting for me is that, Google has managed to create a huge multi-billion-dollar industry or company by not charging necessarily people directly, but by, in effect, aggregating an audience, having almost a secret handshake with you as a searcher by saying, look, you're coming here, I'm giving all this cool technology to you for free, but in exchange, I'm going to use a lot of the data that you're indirectly giving me, and I'm going to go and sell it off to advertisers. And I think we all more or less understand that. So it's more of an indirect funding model, where you're aggregating an audience and you're going and selling it off to somebody who's trying to reach that audience. Do you guys think that the music industry at large is moving away from being a directly funded industry where, I come and I pay a dollar, or I pay $15 or $20 to buy an album, or I pay $15, $20, $30, $100 to buy a ticket? Do you guys think is moving away from that to an industry that's primarily funded by an indirect model where I'm trading my fans and access to my fans, in effect, for dollars, and that's how I'm making my money?
Yeah, I was down in Southwest last week, and there was a hip-hop artist there called Mr. Motherfucker Esquire. Cool, and I saw him play the night before, and he was on stage, and he had like 10 of his posse on there and jumping around, and he looked like he was winging it by the seat of his pants, and he was highly entertaining. Then I saw him speak the next day, and this guy was unbelievable. He had a social media strategy down to the T, and he had he was obsessed with engaging his fans. He would retweet them all the time, which in an earlier panel someone expressed that so well, which is retweets are the new autograph. You do that, people get a great kick out of it. and feel great for 2 days and tell their friends and will follow that artist forever. And he'll comment on their photographs, and he wants them to feel part of his music. And as he said, I want them to feel like they're part of my cult. And he had a great expression, which was, buying music is the tip jar for interaction. So he was going to engage with his fans, this generation that had been brought up not paying for music. But if he would engage them and to such an extent, they would actually start buying music from him because they've got such a relationship with him. So, he honestly had several of those. Kendrick Lamar, another hip-hop artist we saw down there, said every show he does, in his head, 2 people are going to leave that show and follow him. And he's won 2 more followers. And that's his whole focus. And he says, that's why I play so many shows. I'm just trying to build that base and that sort of my marketing team of my fans, one kind of person at a time.
So is it fair to say that the currency that I'm trading today is not my songs, but my fans?
I would say, you're actually touching on a major issue that the industry, I think, is facing, and it is a big question right now. And I know that there are futurists out there that are talking about what the future of the entertainment industry is, and music in particular. But I think that's the big question, right? We've seen that people can get content for free. And so they're not paying for it, but only because they can get it for free. However, they are still going to tours. They're still buying merch. I'm sure you guys are seeing a lot of that. There are other ways to make money, but I think given the decline in the amount of money that a band can make now, they are more open to partnerships with brands. And I think that's what the shift is currently. I don't know what the future holds, but you're starting to see, and I've been doing this a long time, I see now a willingness with artists that want to roll up their sleeves and dig in because they know that they can sell, they can make more money if they're working with a brand, but they can also reach more people, which hopefully they can sell some content, but if not, they'll sell some concert tickets and some merch.
So, Kerry, you've obviously, in your role, you've interacted with everything from the biggest band on the planet to a lot of emerging artists. Do you see, and do you guys on the panel see, a huge difference between the way that artists that sort of came of age and hit it big 20, 30 years ago, the Stones and the U2s of the planet and the Madonnas, do you see a fundamental difference in the way that they're approaching brand engagement and the way that they're approaching promoting those brands to that audience that they have versus, say, emerging artists? And why is that? Is it just a generational thing? What's going on?
Well, I think sometimes it comes down to money. Sometimes the more established artists, they don't need the money. They've got their own awareness and their own recognition, so they don't need any marketing lift from a brand. Whereas an emerging artist, they're still finding their way. They're still trying to make an income, still trying to make a living so they can do their art. They're still growing their fan base. And then they're also younger, so they're more used to social media and technology in a way that an older band isn't.
So it's less of a collaboration with the big guys and more of a show me the money thing versus you're saying the emerging guys are more, hey, let's talk, let's collaborate, let's converse, and let's work together.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a funny story. I don't even know if I should say it, but I will. Toronto Film Festival a couple of years ago, Bruce Springsteen was here. I thought, wow, that'd be really cool for us to do something together. No, it's like I'm not even having a conversation with you because it's Bruce Springsteen. He doesn't need it. So it was like, all right, it was, see ya.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because, obviously I was just at South by Southwest and we're a major sponsor there. And when Bruce came to speak, all the logos of all the sponsors that we actually pay a lot of money for vanished, from the background. We just thought very interesting, right? Because today, again, we're seeing the relationship that emerging music has to be very different. It's not overt. I don't think brands want overt advertising. But it's not also like, oh my God, don't even show it to me. It's the Antichrist.
Well, I think two positive things happened. That the new generation of bands aren't worried about selling out, by being too commercial. I think they realize they can leverage brands to get their music distributed and actually do what they love to do, which is make music. And brands, I think, realize that they don't just want to get a logo up on the wall. They want to do some interesting things. They want to be authentic. That's the other thing. Everyone, if you're going to be in music, you don't want to be so overtly marketing. So they want to do some interesting things with brands. So it's a nice, with bands, it's a nice meeting place in the middle where brands are way more flexible, bands are way more flexible. Now, they've just got there's still obstacles. I mean, I think a lot of brands struggle to even understand the music business, and timelines sometimes don't line up. But I think there's a nice middle spot now where we want to tap into your audience, and they want to tap into the money that the brands can provide.
And it's also marketing channels, though, too. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, the recorded music industry took a major hit in the last 10 years, and they need marketing help. And artists need marketing help, even major artists. Like, we're doing a big release, I can't say what it is, next week with Smirnoff. But it's major artists, but they're still looking for that marketing. But it ultimately is still to drive chart numbers and profile and all that kind of stuff, which will trickle down into touring and all that kind of thing. But we need new avenues for marketing, not just for the dollars. And I think that's where brands, I think artists have really realized the reach that major brands have, and they have the dollars to support the marketing. So they're going after that, right?
Yeah, I mean, we work with Red Bull, and we're powering this large music initiative they're embarking on called Red Bull Soundstage, which is a multi-year initiative. But, Red Bull has 30 million followers on Facebook, and that's something that the average artist cannot tap to. I mean, we were talking earlier, Kerry, and you said, hey, I have, 20 million devices that I can put content on? That's
well, our
valuable.
base is 75 million globally, the people, on BlackBerry, but yeah.
That's huge. And I have a question. We've seen on our end a lot of brands from Midas brakes all the way to Diesel, which is about as disparate as two brands can get, jump into this. Which brands do you think are ultimately going to emerge as winners from these collaborations, and what positions them as that? And is there a type of brand that you guys would say, don't even bother with something like this? It's not right, for you. Or is it for every brand marketer out there?
I think it's about brands understanding what's in it for the bands, and how the bands can actually benefit from the association with that brand. The winners tomorrow are going to be different than the winners next week, but the brands that will truly kind of win in this thing is ones that really understand how they can benefit the artist at the end of the day. A perfect example would be American Express Front of the Line. It's a program that everybody benefits from. If you're an American Express card holder, you benefit from getting pre-sale tickets. If you're American Express, if you're a band, you get free advertising from American Express to promote your show. If you're a company kind of doing that, you're going to benefit from the sponsorship of that entity unto itself. So that program in and of itself really truly benefits all the players that are involved in it. So it's a proprietary program that everybody wins at, and those are the brands and the bands and everybody at the end of the day that's going to win are the ones that really truly get that model.
Well, I think I saw the president of Amex speak a little while ago, and he totally got it that. He recognized they're in a commodity business. I mean, he said, listen, we're a piece of plastic that allows a financial transaction to happen. At the end of the day, that's what we are. But we see ourselves in the service industry, and we want to be the best service provider in the world. And we want to surround that piece of plastic with all these amazing experiences like Front of the Line that you can't get with any other piece of plastic. And so if you're in a category where you're really trying to stand out and do something different beyond the basic function of your product, music is one of those great ways that you can create some, back to being a universal and being very social, which a lot of brands want to be. You can create some experiences or some utility that can help separate you other than the base product service features.
And I'll just add, I saw a panelist yesterday actually in this room speaking, and she was talking about, as a brand, just be really clear about what your core competency is. What are you about? What are your goals and objectives? And I think the brands that realize that and don't sort of overstep that, or, sort of get, how should I take this, dazzled, I guess, by the entertainment business or a particular band or entertainer, I think those are the people that are going to win. I do think it's across brands can benefit from partnering with music and pretty much any entertainment vertical. But again, it's being clear on what your brand is, what you're about, and what it is that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, and I think just because someone's going to give you money doesn't necessarily mean you should take it. I think a lot of bands, they are looking for new sources of revenue all the time. They really want to get out of the garage. They want to take that next step. I think the onus is really on the brand at that point. Make sure you define or you really pick out who is the ideal artist for you, be it emerging or not, to work with. We've seen a lot of interesting collaborations happen on Shopify. One that's not necessarily music related are the guys at Epic Mealtime. They're out of Montreal, really popular today's culture, great friends with Down with Webster and Deadmau5, they really were looking for a way to engage brands, or they had tons of brands engage them, and it made a lot more sense for them to do a deal with Jack Daniels versus, say, Absolute Vodka. So they obviously have all these this strong
What was
ability.
the difference between the two? I mean, what influenced their decision?
If you go to epicmealtime.com and watch any of their videos, they have a profound liking for Jack Daniels. They drink it in excess. They actually filmed an episode of out of our office in Ottawa, and I think they have some serious problems. But no, they're good friends of the company. Don't tell Harley Morenstein, it's fine. But yeah, no, I think the onus is then of the brand, like Jack Daniels, to go, this partnership makes sense for us, and in return, that authenticity from the brand itself or the musician, whatever the case may be, will say, yes, this does make sense, and this is going to further ourselves as an artist, and the brand is going to have the same kind of results on their table.
And I can speak to that because we work on Jack Daniels, and that's a brand that has a really clear understanding of the role of music. It's this icon of masculinity as a brand, but it has this weird tension because the mainstream media, so the stuff you'll see in TV and on print, is all to do with, craftsmanship and the brewery and hardworking and blue-collar ethics. And when you see, but there's this whole other side, which is the rock and roll side, which is all about spontaneity and sex and drugs and rock and roll. And we bring that to life for them through the live music experience and associating with indie bands and putting on these shows all around the US. So they understand that we have one use of media and media tactics over here, and music plays a very specific part in bringing to life this heritage of the brand in a different way.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, we keep using a lot of the same vernacular, authenticity, emotion, excitement, influence, and you could be describing a brand's needs, or you could be describing music at the end of the day. So before I open it up for questions, just going down the line, can you quickly mention one brand that you think does this very well? You don't need to elaborate, just mention a name and we can just go down the line.
I think I already said it, but American Express in front of the line. I mean, it's been around so long, and it's so successful. It's one of the number one reasons why people say they have the card. And it's exclusive to them. So they've locked up the category from a pre-sale perspective, from a credit card sake, and everybody benefits. So I don't see it ever ending.
In the UK, there's a great telco called Orange that does a great job with a company called Rockcall, where they've almost hit two things at one time. They let kids go to shows, but they also do some social responsibility by kids have to volunteer 4 hours in a local community project to get a ticket to a show. So they've done a real nice job over the last few years of kind of making their social responsibility play tied to music and actually be really appealing to teens as well.
Yeah, I have to say too, but I would echo Amex for sure. I was at South by Southwest last week, and they had a very great announcement about a new integration they did with Twitter, and to celebrate it, they just brought Jay-Z in. It's like, they just don't mess around, It's like, we're going to do Jay-Z and Coldplay because we have money, and they just throw it out there, and they're not ashamed to do that, and they integrate it really well. But also, I think just from a music placement, I really like the Heineken ads, integrating bands and that really cool bands that nobody's heard of before, or not, the mainstream maybe hasn't heard of before, and really making them a part of the commercials, actually from a live perspective too, I think is really innovative. So those would be the two for me right now.
So I agree that beverage and financial services seem to do a really good job at it. Technology companies as well, but they've got more of a network, and depending on the size of your company, in a lot of cases you can actually distribute content, so that's kind of an amazing ecosystem. But I was at a conference actually with you up in Cannes at Meedem, and I was listening to what Converse is doing these days, and I thought it was really interesting because they kind of took this whole thing and put it on its ear. So instead of necessarily targeting consumers, they're actually targeting the music industry. So what they've done is created these recording studios. They've got a recording studio in New York, and they found that it's tough for bands and artists, especially emerging artists, to get recording studios and producers. So they're now serving their customer, the band. And I think that's a really, really interesting model and new take on it.
And it's just great that they did that, because that idea has been around. We must have pitched that to so many brands as well, but they actually did it, which, kudos to them.
And actually, I have to say, none of this stuff is new. Not to step on anybody's toes. It's not. But the game is changing. You can be more integrated. It's definitely more social. But you're right. There's not really that many new ideas, but it's, again, all the things that we've said, all the buzzwords that you picked out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and finally, I hope I don't steal your thunder, but I'm really excited about what Red Bull has done. Being kind of a partner of Sonicbids and having Shopify involved in that, we've really got to see what a cool brand that speaks to the youth, that speaks to a younger audience can do for emerging artists who have friends that are in the garage playing music, trying to get discovered. So I really look at a company like Red Bull as a perfect player and someone that's going to do a lot of great things this year.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, sincerity is a big deal. You know, I think if a brand is sincere about it, which is probably what everybody just said, about what they do, then it's successful. And we also find that if there is... If music is an integrated and an integral part of their marketing strategy, then it works. If it's just a one-off campaign, then we've seen our community kind of sour on the brand and be like, hey, you're a carpetbagger. You're just coming in, doing it for 3 months and moving out versus, I mean, even some of the companies that we mentioned here, American Express, Converse, Diesel, Red Bull, you know, BlackBerry. I mean, none of the people out there will hear that these brands are involved with music and somehow they'll say, what? They have a music initiative, you know, but we've worked with hospital change and all kinds of, you know, stuff. And I'm not saying it's been unsuccessful, but again, that sincerity needs to exist. Okay, we have 3 minutes and 33 seconds for questions.
Hi, Philip Torlecki from Unext. Quick question. I'll just start off with Brandon. We have an app, it seems like, for everything. When are we going to get the app that'll finally help the Maple Leafs win something?
Good question.
Ouch. We got the Marlies in the playoffs. They're going to win them.
And sorry, just a question for everybody. Brands are looking to align themselves with bands to gain that cool advantage. Aside from the monetary aspect, what's in it for the bands when it comes to working with sort of big corporate brands?
Well, it depends on the brand you're working with, but I think like Brenden said, and most of us have said on this panel, is it's the reach. We have massive reach in social media channels as well, and customers. You know, again, the BlackBerry base is 75 million users. We're in market with advertising. It's all of that you're able to get. But then depending on what the brand is, if you partner with a brand like BlackBerry, then it's technology. You know, if it's a tour, it's while you're on the road, it's devices, it's product, it's all that. So there's a ton to get from a brand, actually.
Yeah, and what's interesting, we did a survey of our customer base in terms of what they're looking for when they work with a brand. And over 70% didn't say money. They actually said promotion, you know. And when you have a brand like Red Bull saying, hey, you know, everything from Shepard Fairey doing your album artwork to maybe ending on one of the major TV shows or some of that stuff, these brands have access that the average artist or even sometimes the average label doesn't really have that easy access anymore. Yeah.
Hi, I'm a digital content producer for 99.9 Virgin Radio here in Toronto, and I'm just wondering, where are the opportunities do you see for radio in the social music marketing kind of landscape moving forward with bands? And have you seen any success stories across the globe of radio stations that are using this to engage their audience, to not only themselves to benefit, but to the bands as well?
Okay, this is the last question. Unfortunately, we only have a minute. Yeah.
No, I just said that's a great question, and I think we need to understand that a little bit more. I mean, certainly radio and airplay for bands is a great way for them to be heard and to get well known. But I think we need to understand, you know, how we and brands can use radio better to help, you know, promote what we're trying to do and integrate that experience. I mean, you speak of content. Content's king in our world and everybody's world, and creating the right content. Not just the recorded music, but the live show, back behind the scenes stuff like interviews, things like that. It's about understanding how we can better utilize the content that's out there that we're maybe not capturing and integrate it into radio, maybe mainstream radio or other elements.
Well, and I think it's highlighting your personalities, right? And Virgin's a great example. You guys are a huge, awesome brand that goes across many different businesses, but I think it's a matter of making your DJs are the talent. They're the social beings and the social conduit, and they're the ones that are out on the street doing things, doing different events, and they're the ones that are interviewing the bands and having the relationships. So I think it's an old school model, but it still works. Radio have been known to curate music. You guys are curators of content. You have a specific voice. Virgin has a very clear voice, and it's a matter of I think, you know, getting behind your DJs and maybe even production programmers, everybody that's at the station, and having a voice.
Okay, the red light is flashing, and the gentleman in the suit looks like a mobster is trying to get me off the stage. You look great. So thanks a lot, everybody. Really appreciate it, and yeah.
Thanks. Sonicbids rocks.